Well, many of the country's metro municipalities have now been destabilised by these fraught coalitions. Political parties often changing alliances in an effort to get more power for themselves. But what cost is all of this? And does it call for a change in the laws? Well, around political party coalitions. Data analyst at Good Governance Africa, Pranish Desai, joins us now. Pranish, good evening to you. Really do appreciate the time. You and others have made several suggestions, different ways to try and improve what we're seeing with coalitions. What suggestions, what proposals are there on the table?
Good evening, Stephen, and good evening to viewers out there. Thanks for the opportunity. So it's not a secret that coalitions, especially metros, are in chaos right now. To just take one example, Johannesburg alone, since November 2019, has had 9 different mayors and 6 distinct periods of municipal administration. This is clearly having an effect on the way in which governance is delivered, and citizens are suffering. How to resolve this problem? So there are 2 essential mechanisms which can help build more stable coalitions. One is a political culture which emphasizes cooperation between parties, and the second is a legal framework and an institutional framework which facilitates that cooperative relationship, but also encourages stability and transparency. Currently, the political culture in South Africa is both not particularly cooperative, but nor do we have an institutional framework that is capable of delivering stable and transparent coalition governments. There have been a number of suggestions on how this can be done. At Good Governance Africa, we've suggested that one way in which we can facilitate having these suggestions actually turn into meaningful legislation and a conducive political culture is that the President and the Cabinet appoint a special panel to, aggregate all these different opinions, look at what's happened and worked elsewhere in the world, and formulate it in a way that's accessible to both policymakers, policy analysts, and also citizens themselves.
One of the problems is that I think parties don't trust each other. They swap sides all the time. I don't know if voters trust them either. Is there any way to stop them from doing that, unless you have to lock them into coalition agreements, which might be quite difficult?
No, it is hard. At the end of the day, coalition formation is a political process, and that's hard to regulate. It's certainly hard to regulate in any comprehensive way. Basically, in South Africa, there are 2 groups of parties that need to come to different realizations. With regard to the ruling party, the ANC, they need to come to terms with the fact that increasingly they will need to govern with other partners. To some extent, they've demonstrated in the past a capability to do this. Currently, they have a leader of an opposition party within the cabinet itself. Historically, they've had coalitions with members of the National Party and also the IFP installed within cabinet. We'd like to see more of them and the president specifically talking about how they have worked with other parties. From the perspective of opposition parties, while the ANC is clearly in decline, not much can be done in provinces outside of the Western Cape and maybe KZN without their cooperation and them being at the table and playing some role in governance. They have secure majorities in at least 4 provinces. And, even when they'll eventually lose their majorities in places like KZN and Gauteng, we still anticipate that they'd be the biggest party. So opposition parties need to both prepare their voters and also be prepared to deal with the ANC in a constructive way.
One of the issues at the moment is that under the Municipal Structures Act, councillors vote for a mayor or a speaker through a secret ballot. And we've seen what's happened in Swane over the last couple of weeks as a result. Frankly, if you had to ask me, I haven't studied it nearly as much as you have, but I would simply change that provision. It would lead to more transparency and more trust. How would you feel about that suggestion?
So one encouraging thing is that COGTA, the Department of Cooperative Governance, which is in charge of local government, are looking at the Municipal Structures Act and seeing how it can be revised to encourage more stable coalitions. Things that they are looking at are issues like secret ballots. Also, there's a 14-day time limit after an election within which a council must be formed. They're reviewing that. They're also, from what I understand, trying to install a requirement that ensures that parties which do enter into coalitions are compelled to publish those coalitions so that the public have something to, have a barometer according to which to measure coalition parties and whether they're actually fulfilling what they said they would. So in that respect, there are some encouraging signs. The issue is that, nationally and provincially, those mechanisms and the process to deal with how can you make eventual coalitions there more stable isn't in existence yet. And also, even with this new initiative, at the local space, it's not clear whether these, new mechanisms will be in place by next year's national elections, let alone 2026's local elections. So we need to have more transparency regarding when we can expect to see the system change.
Pranish Desai, thank you. Data analyst at Good Governance Africa. Really appreciate the time tonight.